Welcome back, everybody, to the Power of Story podcast. If you're tuning in on Thrive After Sports, thank you for tuning in there as well. This is Taj Dashaun, Vice President of Self-Publish in 30 Days and Athlete Career Transition Coach. I'm here today with a very special guest, Mr. Dartanyon Crockett. What's going on, Dartanyon?
Taj, how you doing? I'm doing really well. Just getting done with the workday, but I love what I do, so I'm doing just fine.
Yes, sir. I love to hear it, man. Just for everybody listening, before we get into this powerful story and all the words of wisdom that Dartanyon is going to share with us, I want to give you guys a little bit of background. Just, it's amazing how sometimes you just get connected with people. People like, I don't know how Dartanyon and I haven't connected before now. It's one of those things like, how have I not met this man already? Long story short, I hosted a panel through University of Florida. I guess this was 2 or 3 weeks ago now. And Dartanyon was on there and he was sharing, and probably about 30 seconds into this man sharing his story, I was like, yep, I'll be reaching out so he can jump on the podcast. So here we are, man. Like I said, Dartanyon, I want to let you introduce yourself. Dartanyon, for anyone listening, he's a retired 2-time Paralympian judo athlete, but I like to just kind of jump off, man, and let you introduce yourself and tell the people listening a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Tosh, thank you for having me on. I'm honored and privileged to be here, and it's always a privilege to be able to share my story as I've seen it resonate with a lot of people. So again, thank you for having me here. So as Tosh said, Dartanyon Crockett, 2-time Paralympian. I've retired now and in my next career, but originally I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and my transition into sports didn't look like a lot of what other individuals' transition into sports looked like. So like my transition into sports came as a result of me being attacked and then me having no outlet on how to deal with that attack and how to deal with the emotional trauma from it. And so what I did was I just buried it deep, and I saw sports as an outlet to make me stronger, faster, and better than I was. And I jumped right into them. And long story short, that led me to being on an ESPN documentary called Carry On, which resonated with the hearts of people around the world, but also opened up an opportunity for me to move out to the Olympic Training Center in the sport of judo. And I was in that documentary with a friend of mine named Leroy, and then the documentary kind of expanded, and we created a beautiful family with the original producer, Fenn. And yeah, it's hard to really explain our relationship, but we're a family. Like, she just jumped in, she reached in, and like it was full go on like, let's help, let's get these skills done, but then like let's also help manage these other opportunities that could be coming from this like ESPN documentary. And that whole transition, that whole process was a beautiful process, because again, it led me into my career as an athlete, which I couldn't be more grateful for. And kind of like sitting back and looking retroactively at my career, it definitely served 2 purposes. One, it just was incredible to be an athlete, and I was so grateful to pursue the dreams of competing as a Paralympian. So definitely gave me something to work toward, but something to be that was more than what I ever thought possible. However, it also served as a distraction from getting to my emotional health and dealing with it. It almost became my addiction in some ways. And using that to continue to propel myself forward in this career and like achieving excellence in it, I was still very much running away from what life had done to me and what I had to heal from it. And so kind of like transitioning out of my career, I finished my career as a world champion and a 2-time bronze medalist, and having medaled in London and having medaled in the Rio Paralympic Games. And to be fully transparent with my career, it was one of those probably should have done this sooner moments. Like I was thinking about retiring just after Rio 2016, but then a bug kind of hit me and was just like, no, go for Tokyo, do it. And I did it. and I went for it, and I began to fight for the wrong reasons. I was no longer fighting for gratitude. I was no longer fighting for the love of the sport. I was fighting just to get to that stipend. I was fighting just to get to that quarterly paycheck that was maybe going to meet my bills, but really wasn't. But I was fighting out of desperation. And it's not that I didn't love the sport anymore. I wasn't in love with the sport anymore. And because of that, I ended up leaving my career. It was still my choice to leave, But it was after my 14th concussion and being paralyzed in Turkey, which was a terrifying experience if that's ever happened to you. And praise be to the Almighty, the goddess, God, whoever was looking out for me that day, that it was just a severely pinched nerve and only lost like complete movement in one leg and one arm. And I was able to walk out of that country, walk into the airport and fly out of that country normally. And so, but when I got back, I had to sit down and like take a long look at like, okay, that could have been a career ending and a life altering injury. And so what I sat with from that was like, I should have done this sooner, but now I got to kick myself into gear and like start moving into what's next. And also in that, what happened was that I was also in no control whatsoever of my emotional state. And that was due to the fact that like once I retired, I didn't retire with any emotional skills on how to deal with what has happened or how to deal with my own trauma. I retired with a beautiful set of skills that like are really helping me in my career now. But I struggled, and like so many athletes do through that transition, because all of me, all of Dartanyon was right here in this world of judo. I boiled myself down to that number that I was. I boiled myself down to that title of judoka, that title of Paralympian, and that was all that was to me. And because I couldn't see anything else, I didn't think anything else was there, I struggled to negotiate life in the real world. I struggled to negotiate life after retirement because I didn't know who I was when the gi was off. I didn't know who I was when I wasn't competing on that mat, and I was lost. I was scared. I was also very much traumatized and on the verge of a psychotic break, the very real psychotic break. And as I retired, I jumped into social work to try and find my place in the world of substance abuse, because I have a lot of experience with it, seen it in my family, experienced in my own life. And I knew enough in my life at that time that I had seen enough substance abuse to know that I had no idea about it. I did not have enough language to speak to it. In the language that I did have it, only saw it as a cycle and a curse. None of the language that I had for it told me that there was a way to remedy it. And so that's what school ended up giving me. And I want to give a shout out here to three very special individuals who helped with my education, because them having a hand in my education gave me access to tools that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise. Because while I was in school, while I was in social work, I changed my major to sociology because I reached a point in social work that it just wasn't for me. It just stopped clicking. And when I did, like through the whole thing, I was reaching and grabbing tools for myself to understand my own mental health, to move forward, to help others. And I'm still working on my education, have a semester left. And again, I even when I switched to sociology, mental health and trauma was still at the forefront of my research. Like I coupled all of my sociological assignments, even in like the elective classes. Any research paper that I did, any creative project that I did, I all tied it to mental health. I tied it to childhood trauma. I tied it to some kind of abuse because I needed more language. I needed to understand. And when I got to a point where I was like really ready to hit my psychotic break, I was very much at my low. I woke up one morning, and it's one of those mornings when you wake up and you're already tired and you already feel defeated. It's like this day hasn't even started yet. I haven't even rolled out of bed and I'm already done with today. It was definitely one of those days. I was already on the verge of tears. I got out of bed, still kind of like contemplating what's next. What should I do? Who am I, essentially? And I walked out of my bedroom and like I went to the kitchen and began making me a cup of coffee just again to try and get my day started. I had already washed my face. I had already like gotten sort of ready for the day. I walk, and I'll show you the picture because I still, of course, have it. But I walked and I saw this picture of my mom. I made eye contact with her, and I was just like, damn. I just washed my face. And then just tears just streaming. The floodgates opened. I started wailing like ugly crocodile tears. I was ugly crying. And in a moment of desperation, I called out to my mother. And when I did, just a song that she used to sing when I was growing up, it filled my lungs, it filled my heart, it filled my voice, and I just started singing His Eyes on a Sparrow. And that crying and then that release just of, and again, what I'm learning as a researcher of emotions, of trauma, that creative release that I found in that moment of desperation, that great moment of sadness, was what helped me channel that pain. It was what helped me channel a lot of what it felt like I couldn't before. And so just out of desperation, creativity is what really pulled me back to my senses. And so after having that cry, after singing that song and feeling that my mother was right there with me, I shifted my focus again toward trauma and toward education. I ended up finding a career as a what I thought was going to be a babysitter position to like make some extra money in college. It turned out to be a career that changed my life completely, my whole perspective on who I thought I was going to be in this life. And so I ended up going on care.com, which is a babysitting website for like babysitters to put their information in and like look for babysitting jobs. And sometimes there's like those companion jobs that you like hang out with someone's like older parent and you help them out with stuff, or like camp counselor jobs. And I got this job that was an after school programming position and didn't know what to expect. Me and a woman who interviewed, we jived. There's this Black woman who like, apparently she's hailed as like one of the heroes of the town because she's just like one of those like success stories. Like this Black woman came from almost nothing, dealt with the struggle that our Black women face in this country, but still rose up to a very powerful position and is like changing lives with her position in the company. And so I took the position at this job. I fell in love with teaching immediately. Like a lot of things that I noticed that were researched, like current research, was things that came intuitively to me, that like I just knew how to react in that sort of state with children. And there's a strong part of me that was like, no, stop it. Wait a minute. No, stop. Wait. Because all my life, I had told myself I would never become a teacher. I will never step back into a classroom. That just ain't going to happen because I have so much emotional baggage from school and just from that time in my life that, again, I didn't think I was ever going to do it. I found my way into it. And again, it triggered everything from school. It actually triggered 7 years of repressed memories that I didn't know were there and that I had to deal with. And so as I began this teaching position, I was also moving through those 7 years. I was relearning about myself, essentially. I was relearning about all the horrors and traumas that I had dealt with growing up. In that same breath, I had different skills. I had a new set of skills. I was a different fighter than I was before. And so while I was starting this new career as a teacher, I was using every tool in my arsenal while attaining new ones to begin healing. And now, like through that process, I took on another like teaching position, but I ultimately found myself at this organization called the Yes Institute, which is Youth Empowerment Support Services. And it is everything that we needed, like especially people in our generation, I'm about 30, that we needed in school. I teach emotional intelligence to students, to middle school students who need it. And to kind of give you an example, a lesson that we're working on right now, we're working on belief systems and understanding where do our beliefs come from? How do we develop beliefs? And how can we understand when a new belief forms? And that kind of jumps us into what's called the belief cycle. And it's so cool to be able to teach this information because not only am I teaching it, especially through this cool curriculum, and I got to give all kinds of praises to the CEO who wrote this. It's a man from Belgium named Carlo. And the curriculum, it meets individuals where they are. Like, you don't have to know anything about emotional health. You don't have to know anything about it, about like the deeper implications of the curriculum. But it's truly a curriculum that I believe can be accessible and taught to all ages, because again, it meets you where you are and people are able to interpret it in different ways. And we're not just telling you what to think. We're not just teaching you facts and dates to remember. It's critical thinking, it's creativity, it's exploring who we are. And it's a powerful curriculum and a powerful tool for middle schoolers. And it was also powerful just in my transition of retirement, because that even in my career as a teacher, though that beautiful life that I had as an athlete still kept coming back. It's like, hey, who are you outside of this athletic career? And even though I knew that I was retired, I knew that like that time was over, and I knew that I was already knee deep into like my next endeavor. Feeling is different than knowing. Feeling is totally different than knowing. And what I felt was still unworthy. What I felt was still behind in a lot of ways, still in my career, still stuck back there, still trying to like claw and figure out who I am. And as I'm still putting those pieces together, I do have to say that I am healing beautifully. And I'm beginning to have my hand in a lot of really cool endeavors that I didn't think I'd ever be a part of. And while I'm not Christian, I'm very much spiritual. And what I'm seeing now is that every traumatic experience, every awful thing that I've been through is right now in this very moment working for my good and for the good of so many of the students that I see each day. And it's been a beautiful journey that I'm just beyond words, just grateful for.
Wow. And now for everybody listening, you see why I wanted to have this man on the show. There's so much there that I want to get to, so much I want to unpack, but I want to start with this because I know that, like you said, you do research on these things now, research on emotions. And like you said, you're in the middle, not in the middle, but really coming out of a beautiful healing journey. Obviously, we're all a work in progress. Mm-hmm. But something I want to talk to you about is how you referenced earlier that you used judo, and a lot of athletes, we know this, use their sport as a distraction from things in their personal lives. Like you said, it's an outlet for childhood trauma, for things. Our sport becomes our sanctuary to where we can go there, forget about everything else, so that once we're done playing, we're left with all these unprocessed emotions. So I think it would be good, not just for athletes to hear, but for just people in general to hear your thoughts on how we can be more intentional about processing our emotions. Because like you said, like for me, I won't go into my whole story, but it took almost like not a psychotic break, but just going through depression and just being tired of the way I was living to be like, okay, I'm going to stop running from it. I'm going to do something. In your case, like you said, you saw that picture of your mother, you broke out in song, and that was the breaking point. So how can people be intentional about digging deep, looking within, and healing parts of themselves that need healing so they can be the best versions of themselves today?
Yeah. First and foremost, to be intentional about like your own healing process and just understanding yourself, giving yourself compassion, giving yourself grace, giving yourself the love that you needed during the most traumatic events of your life. That is one of the most, those are the three most difficult things as humans that we are able to do, especially when we're traumatized, because we are our own worst critics. We are very much guided by what's comfortable. And if self-hate and building a sense of self-worth is what's familiar to us, we're going to continue to do that. And we oftentimes don't have compassion for ourselves either. And again, it's hard to do when you don't have that sense of self-worth, when you are struggling, when it's hard to build an idea of who you are when so many ideas of who you are not are invading your mental space. And that's a lot of energy to be taking up. And so again, compassion, giving yourself grace, and just loving yourself where you are. And then from there has to become a deeply rooted foundational acceptance of where you are, how you are in this point in time. Because oftentimes, if we don't get that compassion and all that stuff first, we define ourselves by what's happened. And then we continue to live in that definition of what we've defined ourselves or what our labels or our trauma has defined for us. And when we give ourselves the space to accept where we are, and even in that same breath, say, I don't know what's next. I don't know who I am. I don't know how to heal. When we say the words, I don't know, when we express the words, I don't know, we invite knowing to come find us. We invite knowing into our space. Because when you can say, I don't know, then you're relinquishing that control. You're saying that like, this isn't my definition, and I don't know what is. And I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to new ideas. And when you become open to new ideas from a place of grace, from a place of acceptance, from there, you're starting to work within your power, especially when you're calm, because when you work from that place again of acceptance, of grace for yourself, of understanding for yourself, and a readiness to heal, I'll say we, because this is true for all humans, all of us, that we build a sense of peaceful determination. We're ready to begin and then we also understand that information, if it is not a reflection of our highest emotions, and so and this is a whole conversation we can get in on what I consider high or low emotions. And higher emotions are those emotions that are considered positive. So love, joy, acceptance, gratitude. And those lower emotions are pain, hatred, fear, things like that. And so when we, again, moving from that place of acceptance, we have an intuitive knowing that ideas that come in, that beliefs that come in, that begin to shape our reality, that shape who we are, we intuitively know that, like, unless it's a higher emotion, it ain't for me. Unless it gives me a higher thought about myself, it ain't for me. And from there, we set that progress. We set into motion a beautiful practice, because again, it's a practice. We're not always going to get it right. Our intuition is sometimes going to lead us astray, and that's okay. But again, it still gives us the chance to step back into that not knowing, so knowing can still find us, but to also learn from whatever mistake we made, to interpret it like, okay, this wasn't quite the step that I needed to take. Let me take a back step and step in a different direction. And then also accepting that it's a practice, to be emotionally intelligent, that it's a practice to sit with yourself and ask yourself how you're feeling. And then a good way to strengthen your practice is to, and you can just find this online by Googling it, but like finding a list of, like, a comprehensive or as big of a list as you can of words that describe emotions. Because when we have more language to describe how we're feeling, then we're not just good and we're not just bad, or we're not just okay and we're not just fine. We can speak to what's going on inside of us better. We can articulate better of what we're exactly feeling, and that just builds more awareness on what we're feeling. And then we can anticipate when we are diving into lower emotions. We can say, well, I'm angry, but I'm more aggravated at this situation. I'm happy, but I'm more excited that, like, this thing is happening. We use more language to create more of a nuanced conversation with ourselves about our emotions. And then when we begin having conversations with ourselves, when we begin opening a dialogue with our emotions, then we open the door to so much power that, like, we had no idea that we can access while we're living in a society that says men don't cry, emotions are for the weak, and it's just a winner take all grit struggle, when that's not it. That's definitely not, that's not the move. I thought that was the move. I tried to move like that for so long, and I'm sure many of us have. But when we move like that, when we move without our emotions, we're moving without a vital piece of ourselves. And something that I talk about is how we're three-part beings. And again, this is a long answer to what could have been short, but I think this is another very vital piece into understanding and sustaining a positive emotional state within ourselves. So very much understanding ourselves as three-part beings, in the sense that we are our mind, so our thoughts, our feelings, we are our emotions, so our heart, our soul, and we're this physical body. And each of them have a different language. Each of them are affected differently by trauma, by things that have happened to us. And having more language to speak to those three parts, we can make sure that they're all communicating the same way. Because if one of those parts isn't in conjunction or isn't connected to the other, then it's like the three credit bureaus that run our credit and kind of run our lives. If one credit bureau has your information mixed up, the other ones aren't going to talk to you. Just like if your heart is trying to tell you one thing and your mind and body are telling you, to give a more precise example, because most of the time we feel that we're in crisis mode. We feel that we're in danger when we're overwhelmed with stress, when we're having a traumatic episode. And so if our heart is telling us this, like, yeah, we're safe. We're safe. It's okay. our mind and our thoughts are telling us, like, oh, no, things are not okay. We are in danger right now. Because what happens when we're triggered, what happens when we're even thinking back to an emotional event, our brain sends a chemical reaction to the body that tells us that we're in danger. That sends a fight or flight response to the rest of our body. Because our emotions, they are, again, not only powerful tools to be understood, they each carry a frequency, and they each have different physiological effects in our body. And the most powerful emotion sounds lovey-dovey, sounds fuzzy. The most powerful emotion is love and gratitude. Those are the two most powerful and the two highest emotions. If there's anything if there are just only two things that you can take out of your house when you leave for the day, take out love and gratitude and bring those with you. Because those two emotions will get you anywhere and everywhere you need to go. But a stronger understanding of all of the emotions will get you even further. And I'd say the two most powerful lower emotions are fear and hatred. And fear is something that attracts like energy. And so what you resist persists. When you are so fearful of a situation, all you're going to think about is that situation and how to get away from it. But what you're telling your soul and your body, what you're telling those familiar pathways in your mind that you've been through, is that, all right, let's keep going toward this danger. Let's keep heading toward that direction. Because again, that's all that's on your mind. Whether you're saying, no, I don't want this. I don't want to think about this. Again, that translates to your mind as in, I'm thinking about this. This is what's on my mind. Same with hatred. When we're hating someone, when we viscerally hate someone to a degree where we are just saying it. And again, all we're thinking about is that person, and we're thinking about our hate. For hating someone, it's essentially, and I love this quote and I use it all the time, we are drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That's what we're doing when we hate. And again, building that more nuanced understanding of all of those emotions, how they relate to the three parts of ourselves, while giving ourselves acceptance and grace, and choosing not to define ourselves by our past, but choosing to accept ourselves where we are at any given time. And this can be at any part of your journey. I said this to one of my students who, she changed her name and she changed her name back, and now she's thinking of changing her name again. But I told her, like, kid, you can start over anytime you want. You can start over whenever you need to if you have to. And if a name change is that starting over for you, please do. And that, yeah, you don't have to stay defined by what you are. And that, yeah, if you're ready to start over, if you're ready to, like, all right, I know that I said I accept myself and I'm moving forward last week, I'm doing it this week. Because sometimes we'll say that. Sometimes we'll go through those steps. And then a week, maybe 2 weeks later, maybe even 6 months to a year later, we might be back where we started. Or we may feel like we're back where we started. Again, knowing is different than feeling. We may feel that we're in there, and then again, we have to kind of start back at square one. But that's where that understanding of this is a practice. No one's going to get it completely right the first time. It's not going to be a perfect thing. And the healing process is not as beautiful as it is. It's also not that beautiful. It is a convoluted mess of nonsense is what the healing process is. But when it's your healing process, you begin to appreciate every bit of it. You begin to appreciate even the most horrific things that have happened to you. Because when you truly set out on that healing process, when we truly set out on our healing process, and then we make it unique to us, when we guide it how it makes sense to us and we use language that we've developed over time, it doesn't matter what's happened to us. It doesn't matter what we've lost. We can rebuild, we can grow, and we can create from a much more solid and sturdy foundation than we've ever had. Because again, that what we are are three-part beings, and how to really allow those pieces to align up, we need to build a strong foundation that connects the three. Oftentimes, especially in our society, we're not connected in all three areas, and we're neglecting some piece of it. And When we do that, again, you're neglecting an important piece of yourself that wants to be expressed, that needs to be expressed. And when we are fully expressed beings, but in a positive way, then our power is unlimited. Our power is absolutely limitless from what we can do, from the tasks that we can take on, and how deep our capacity is to not only learn about ourselves, but to manage ourselves in a way that we didn't even realize we were capable of doing.
D'Artagnan, one of the things I'm enjoying the most about what you're sharing right now is, excuse me, not only are you sharing your personal journey and your personal experience, but you're really putting under the microscope and breaking it down to a science how others can begin the healing process and how they can look at their lives and look at the things that they're experiencing objectively to be able to carve out a way that they can dig themselves out of it and begin the healing process. And like you said, it's not just a one and done. It's an everyday type of thing that you constantly have to be putting the reps in. So thank you for sharing all that, because I think there's a lot of value for people listening to be able, no matter what stage they're at, you gave tips and advice and sort of different perspectives from every stage of the healing process, as well as the continuing healing process. So I definitely appreciate that. I want to dive more into some of the work you're doing right now, because you talked earlier about how it started out with social work and then, teaching, working with kids, and now everything you're doing with the Yes Institute. We were talking beforehand, before I hit record. I know that you have some exciting news and big things that are going to be happening as far as your role at the Yes Institute. Can you just talk a little bit more about the Yes Institute in general, and then how your role is evolving and what you foresee with your work there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Yes Institute was founded about actually 20 years ago, like this year, and founded in Denver, Colorado. The CEO, I've actually talked with him like multiple times because our visions line up on like how we want to serve the world, and that was like the coolest thing that I could ever ask of a new job and of a boss, is that our visions line up. And it was such a beautiful moment to like be in a conversation with this man and like hear his process on like how he created this and like what he did. And so he went on very much of his own healing journey and realized and saw that like emotional intelligence, that is the key to our success. Not just cramming in academic information or being mentally or physically tough. That emotional intelligence piece, that really understanding heart, but then building a curriculum out of it, is vital to our success. It's not one or the other. It all goes hand in hand with everything that like helps develop us as humans. And so he developed this, and right now we are in, not entirely sure how many schools we're in, but we just found ourselves in another Denver-based school. But we are in several middle schools and high schools. And my current position, and like, again, the crux of the organization, we also have like other support services. So we'll do scholarships for students. We'll do like food and clothing and like supply drives. But again, at the crux of it is the road to success curriculum. And as a program manager for the company, I managed a program that's within a middle school. And so that program is essentially me teaching the curriculum in the class, but also like doing the outreach to like recruit more students into the program and things like that. And so again, I'm a program manager, but at the end of the day, I'm a teacher, because I'm teaching this curriculum, I'm facilitating this curriculum, and like making this information accessible to students. And so I love this job more than any other job that I have, but life right now is taking me back to Cleveland. And I'm from Cleveland originally, taking me back to family. It's a little bittersweet because, again, leaving this beautiful job that I know, but also it's opened up a door to a very cool opportunity where, again, talking back about those skills that I found through judo, like very much entrepreneur type skills that like I just learned from paying attention and watching as I was an athlete, and then trying as much as I can, not always succeeding at it, being a part of the conversation for like big decisions and stuff like that. the opportunity is that YES is trying to expand. And I think it's absolutely amazing that we're trying to expand, because right now we're only in Denver. And so we're trying to expand and go globally. And so in an attempt to do that, we are looking to create a position that is a director of expansion. And in this role, what I'd essentially be doing is I would be hustling and grinding and doing whatever I can to get yes in every single school that'll hear me speak. And so I'm going to use what I intend on doing with that particular career is using my skills as an inspirational speaker to essentially help facilitate and teach, and help also make and teach workshops for people to get sort of a taste of like what we do at Yes in different schools to spread the curriculum. Because again, I think it's so needed, and I'm watching students heal and grow beautifully in its curriculum, even if they're not completely engaged into the work, because it's resonating, because we're talking about how you're feeling. We're talking about your emotions and like how to manage yourself at the end of a very stressful day, how to change your day around. If your day started off in Becky Sue in the classroom just started talking crap about you, now you're angry. And how do you deal with that anger? How do you hold on to that anger without it overflowing and bursting into something that you at some point will come back and say, I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish I hadn't said that. It helps students become more proactive instead of reactive to their environment, which I think is so cool. And in this position, again, I'd be like, one of the things that, again, as we're writing this, one of the things that like I mentioned is that like I will go door to door to door of every school in any district, knocking on it saying like, hey, do you need emotional intelligence in your school? I bet that you do. Let's have a conversation. And again, spreading the awareness of yes, but in not just to like get us teaching in the classroom, but to let people know that like there is a movement right now to get emotional intelligence, to get access to emotional intelligence, which is not just good things to know. Like, I honestly believe that it is our birthright to know how we operate as humans. While we teach biology and how the digestive system works and how the brain works, we also need to know how these emotions work in our bodies, how our thoughts carry frequency and attract or deflect things that we want or don't want, how our belief systems guide our behaviors, and how we are also very much guided by our subconscious thoughts, which we aren't even aware of. And so, again, not only do I think that this is just good information for humans to have, this is our birthright. We need to know this information, especially as there is research done on it and it is out there. And I think that a goal that I have for myself is restructuring in a beautiful way our education system to where it meets students where they are, and it's not about competition or the best grade. It's about fostering and growing youth and teaching them everything they need to know to be successful adults. Doesn't matter if you are a 13-year-old and you are still at a 6th grade reading level. It doesn't matter if you're in high school and you are at a college level. Where we are in education, where we are in our learning, it's just where we are in our learning. It doesn't make you better or worse than someone else. It just means that based on your environment, based on how you grew up, this is how you interpret and process information. And when we can look at education through a lens like that, ideally, we won't be so focused on test scores. We won't be so focused on what Ivy League college do I want to get my kid in. We'll be focused on fostering and growing our youth and contributing members of our society that are healthy and can handle emotional stress as well as mental stress, as well as become self-sustainable in our environment. And while we can do that without it, the long-term effects aren't worth it to do it without it.
Wow. Go ahead and drop the mic on that one, Dartanyon. Go ahead and drop the mic, man. What more can I say to that, man? I think the last thing I want to share, and I want to be respectful of your time, man. This is exactly what I wanted to have you on because you have such a powerful story. But it's a great example of being able to carve out a path for yourself in spite of what you've been through, right? For the athletes tuning in, being able to carve out a path for yourself after you're done playing your sport and being able to find a way to still contribute and still give back and constantly, like for you, that excites me with you stepping into this role as director of expansion. Because what that is that you've locked on to this new mission and you've been able to push yourself. Like you said, that athletic mindset, that competitor, the thing that made you great at judo is what is causing you to push with your mission now. You know, you still put on the, you know, the what's it called? Is it a gi? Do I have that? Is that correct? Okay, I didn't want to, you know what I'm saying? I got to stay on my lane. I play football. I don't know.
That, right?
So you put on the gi every day in life now. You put that on and you go out there and you represent for the things that you believe in. And that's a beautiful thing, man. So I definitely appreciate you sharing all of that, for your words of wisdom. Please tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want to reach out, if they want to know more about Yes Institute or just some of the things that you got going on. Where can they follow you on social media? Please talk about all of that, man.
Yes, absolutely. This hasn't been made announcement yet, but as I step into the role, or even if I don't step into the role, one of the things that I intend on doing, so I'm on Instagram and I'm on LinkedIn. My Instagram account is verified. However, I don't care that much about that. That just says I'm a real person. And so, and this is also to my followers who may be seeing this, who may be watching this. I am not going to deactivate that account. However, I am going to give that account to Yes, so that they have a stronger platform. And what I ask of my followers is to don't unfollow that account. Follow that account and know that, like, I am still going to be sharing a lot of information from that account. And that account is still very much attached to me and my mission and why it is that you guys support me and follow me. And again, I appreciate it so much, so very much, because reflecting back on my childhood and where I'm from and how I grew up, being able to say that I have fans and followers and people who support me is huge. Because, yeah, it's just huge. And so it's monumental for me to be able to have that. But also know I'm not that active on social media sometimes. And so it's also why I'm relinquishing the check to them so they can, again, use that as a platform to become further spread. But right now, I'm on Instagram as Dartanyon91. And on LinkedIn, you can just type in Dartanyon Crockett and you'll find me.
Awesome, man. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing, brother. This has been a pleasure. The first of many conversations, I'm sure. And I will be reaching out for, you know, to have you on more platforms and different things like that. So thank you again, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was awesome being on the show. I love doing interviews like this because it always gives me a chance to go back and, again, like, rehab that conversation with myself, re-dig through my research and re-fire those neurons, those neural pathways in the brain to, again, learn as I teach, learn as I grow and, like, have these sorts of conversations. So again, thank you for it. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, brother. The first of many. And for everybody tuning in, this has been another great episode of The Power of Story and Thrive After Sports with Dartanyon Crockett. We'll have all of his information linked in the show notes. So please reach out to this man, connect with this man, support everything he's doing with the Yes Institute, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Dartanyon.
Thank you.